Today, I'm very excited to welcome Ingun Bol, founder of Female Wave of Change and leader in empowering women. For years, she's helped women embrace their strength and lead with purpose. And Ingun shows that leadership isn't about sacrifice, it's about owning your power and making an impact. Her insights are sure to inspire anyone looking to stand stronger. Let's dive into her journey and vision. Welcome, Inger, to my podcast show for female leaders.
Yes, thank you, Susan. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, shall we just dive right into the first question?
Let's do that.
All right. Um, yeah, we share something in common because we're both coming from an IT world where we held, and you held various commercial roles. You've increasingly focused on women and their position in leadership. What inspired you to make this shift
Oh,
a
wow.
while
What,
ago?
what inspired me to make that?
Yeah.
Well, that's a journey, of course. It's not
Yeah.
one moment. And for me, it's very important that I'm an engineer from background.
Hmm.
Ended up in this IT industry, but like many of us at that time
Hmm.
in space. So I worked in the IT industry almost 20 years. But the thing is, I was never really happy. And that is something, you just keep on pushing. You keep on going, thinking that you need to be happy. You need to be satisfied. You need to make that career. That was just the thing that we did after our schooling, after university. You just went for your
Because
job.
that's the thing you do. You go to school, you finish as high as possible, and then you start your career, and then you should be happy.
Is how we were
Yeah.
raised, I
Yeah.
think. So that was what I was doing, and I became more and more unhappy in this very masculine world in the
Hmm.
IT.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the only women in the room. At the end, when I left, it was more women. I was making sure that more women were coming in, but most of the time, I was the only woman in the room, and with all the things that were happening. And for me, there was a moment, and that was, I had already started my family. I had my daughters, small at that time, at home. Working, trying to combine everything. To make that career, to get your targets. That was very important, of course.
Hmm.
Your friends, your home, everything needed to be. So I had to. I had my third um, burnout, and
Third.
yes,
Wow.
two small ones. And when I had
Yeah.
my third, I thought it was a small one. I even called the doctor and I said, we need to talk. And it was, I think, the first day that I stayed at home. And I said, we need
Yeah.
to talk because I don't really feel well, but I do want to, go out and do fun things. And during that conversation, I think within 5 minutes, she said, you're really having a burnout. I thought, oh, okay, that's what it is. So, but at that time, that for me, it became more and more clear that, I wasn't happy at what I was
Yeah.
doing in my role, pushing for that career, pushing for the targets. And that the only one that could really change my life, that was me. And I could try to change the organization and try to change that whole masculine atmosphere in
Hmm.
that organization. But I thought, well, that's not going to change, so I have to change. So anyhow, so I quit my job and yeah, started looking for new things. And for me, it was very important that um, when I went through that whole process, that I became more and more aware that that was what I wanted to help people with. And actually, because I had a whole network of men, I started working with men. So it took quite some time before I realized that I was moving more towards women, and that was, yeah, also not really by choice, but it just happened, and I'm really happy, really, really glad that it did happen. Um, I can, there was this moment. We had moved to Spain for a little while, for a year and a half, with my husband at that time already, also coming from a
Your family,
corporate
also
space.
including your daughters. Yeah.
Well, no, they
Oh,
were, my daughters were at the time. The youngest turned 18, and then we said, so
oh, right.
what is
Yeah.
going faster? You moving out or we moving out? And we had a our conclusion was, we have to move out. That will go very fast. And both being independent, we said, okay, let's move out and let's move to Spain, to live, a different lifestyle,
Mm,
work combination with enjoying, the weather in Spain, um, but also building our business there online, and we did for a year and a half, and that was really great. But when I came back, I actually, was just looking for new networks, and I found an organization just before Christmas, online in the United States, and I saw that they were organizing huge events for the 100th International Women's Day.
okay.
At that time, I did not really know the celebration of International Women's Day from the Netherlands, but I knew it from the time that we lived in France, the time that we lived
Yeah.
in Spain. So I thought, okay, this might be interesting that I joined the team in Amsterdam because were marketing a huge event in Amsterdam also. So I contacted the organization, and within the hour, the global president, called me, and she said, "Oh, Amsterdam is wishful thinking. Can you do that?" And I thought, well, I was looking at my completely male network at the time, and I thought, why is she asking me? And I said, let me think about it over the holidays, and I will come back to you. And actually, on January 1st, I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Event in the Netherlands, however big or small, I'm going to ask for help on the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever there was at that time. It was 2010. And within a week, I had 60 people, 60 people who approached me and said, I want to help. And I thought, okay, so the event is at least 60 people, women are going to be there. But let's try to make it a little bit bigger. And March 8th, we had 1,500 women on 12 different
Wow.
locations.
Yeah.
It was That's not a story about how good I am or look at me, but that was really the time that I changed my perspective from, what is happening in the world, who are the real change makers, what is the power and really the strength of women. And from that moment on, I thought, oh, I need to work with women. They Being able to accomplish that with women in such a short period of time, most of the women were small entrepreneurs, and I thought, well, this is really the group I want to work with. So
Yeah.
that was actually the moment that changed my perspective, and I thought, okay, this is what the change I am going to make for myself and my target group.
Yeah. But if I listen to you carefully, it didn't start there. It didn't start um, that you knew what you wanted to contribute for the world. It started with you asking yourself the question, I am not enjoying myself.
Yes,
And
yeah,
after the third burnout, and from what I've heard, it was a bigger one than the first two, you had to change.
I
And
had
you
to,
did.
and
And you did.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Talking
it's
about leadership,
scary.
right?
It's
Yeah.
really scary, and
Yeah.
last year I did, well, actually this year, 24.
Mm,
I did a long podcast series for my company,
yeah.
for the Wise Move Society, Thrive After 50. And I was talking, 15 interviews with all people who had to make that change, and
Yeah.
some did it in a couple of days, some really took the time. But that moment they really decided that it's me and I have to do it now. Most of them did not know what they were going to do. So
Yeah.
they all felt, that there's that scary moment. And I could really, I heard them and I felt with them because that is what I went through, so many years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a decision, and yeah, that you have to change. But still, working on that, really what your passion is and your purpose. Also that came gradually. It was
Yeah.
more that my target group at that moment changed, and I became more and more. And you're absolutely right in that space. That seeing what is happening in the world, being aware that you're part of that you're not an outstander, that you're not an outsider. And I saw change is good, and rapid change is good. But the
Yeah.
direction in which we were heading, I felt this is just not okay. This is just not okay. And for me, it became more and more clear because I was working more with women that authentic feminine leadership is the way to drive change. And another group, came on board gradually, and that is the older generation, because that also is a group that's has to and wants to lead change. But authentic feminine leadership, for me, that became very important.
Um, I ask you a few questions about that later, but I hear you also say something interesting, because in this world we live in now, often we get to believe. We are made to believe that passion and purpose, it comes with an instant blink of an eye, and then you go for it, and then you live your life happily after all. But it's a
Mhm.
journey, right?
It is a journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there is, I think, no end to it,
yeah, yeah,
to the
exactly.
journey. It
Yeah,
keeps on evolving. And, now I see, I'm 65, just turned 65.
yeah, yeah. Congrats. Yeah,
The journey, the purpose I was talking about 20 years ago, it's not completely different, but it is evolving. And I also love that. It's I think the final destination, whatever you call, is not really changing, but the way you're moving towards that final goal, that is changing. And that's okay. It is okay. We live in a changing world. Change
yeah,
is the only thing that is constant in our life.
yeah.
So we need to be able to be flexible and to really
Adapt and yeah,
adapt,
yeah,
and yeah, and decide to move. It will not be major, but it will be a little bit left or a little bit right, and that's okay.
yeah. If I'm correct, and if I hear you sharing your story right now, one of your messages for the world is that true change starts from within.
Hmm.
How has that belief shaped you as an entrepreneur, as a leader?
How has that changed myself? Well,
Yeah, from within. Yeah.
yeah, it is a deep dive, and that also is not an easy dive, because you think you know yourself, but you don't.
Yeah.
And the more and more I talked about it with others, I became more and more aware of who I was and what I believed in, and what really my purpose was. So, and to be able to do that, you need to move inwards. And there was someone a couple of years ago who said, "Well, we actually have three brains. You have your head brain."
Mm-hmm.
And as an engineer, you mostly
Yeah,
use
yeah.
that part.
You pick from
Uh,
it constantly.
yeah, and then you have your heart brain, and you have your gut.
Yeah.
And I think that the deeper you go and you really move towards that gut feeling, that
Mm-hmm.
intuition, then you really move. And of course, that heart feeling is very important, especially for us as female and feminine leaders. But to dive even deeper and to trust your gut feeling and to trust your intuition, that is, yeah, that's really it again, it's a journey. And it's,
Mm.
the I once I had a message also, when people were talking to me about that heart, I said, well, for people who are only using your brain, to really to move towards that heart feeling. So what is your heart telling you? It's it's only 30 centimeters, but it's a very long journey, and to move even downwards to your gut, yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
that's
another journey.
even longer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to dare to really feel what things are doing to you. And especially when I worked in IT, and the time that I had these burnouts, I was only
Yeah,
working
yeah,
from here, and I see
yeah.
a lot of people doing that, and that's too bad. Yeah,
Yeah, life was trying to tell you something, I guess, right? At least that's my vision on life. Yeah, if you don't
yeah,
do it yourself, it's going to be done for you.
yeah.
Is this The example with the three brains, does this get close to, according to you, what is authentic female leadership?
Yeah, well, I tend to call it authentic feminine leadership.
Feminine.
Because,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
it is not about men and women.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of female leaders that are not using their feminine qualities.
Yeah.
So I love to call that absolutely their authentic feminine leadership. And
Yeah.
an authentic feminine leadership cannot do without that heart and that gut feeling and that
Yeah. The
intuition.
two extra hearts.
They
Yeah.
have to, yeah, they have to come closer to that. So absolutely, yeah, that's where our secret lies.
Yeah. And what makes you optimistic about the future of feminine leadership and its impact on the world?
Well, first of all, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, am I already optimistic? I think I'm contributing to that change.
Yeah.
No one can do it on their own. So we really all have to contribute. But I really believe that if you look at the world right now in the situation that we're in, you have polarization in the whole politics, but also in society. We see what is happening with the wars that are going on.
Yeah.
That's awful. I just cannot wrap my head around it that people are just killing them for a reason that I just don't understand it. And I don't want to understand it. But also the situation of our planet. It's huge, the things that we're facing right now. And I do believe that things have to get worse before they get better. But I think right now we're really in a situation that it is getting worse. But the thing is, the more we focus on the solution, I think we will be getting there. So that
Yeah.
means that we need to guide more women to move on that transformation journey towards authentic feminine leadership.
Yeah.
So that's very important. So I am contributing. And someone asked me, so how many people have gone through that program that we're offering,
Yeah.
the Women Leading in Change program of Female Way of Change? So it's not so much about how many women have done the program. It is what they have done after that.
Yeah.
And there's amazing project that started there, and that you see that they're making an impact in so many lives, in their family, their community, their nation, but also the impact that we will have on the world. So I really do believe that the more we guide women to use their authentic femininity, the more we will bring change. And that will be step by step by step, but it will be a multiplier effect. So in the end, there will be a lot of women who step in, and
Mhm.
more when men will follow, because that is
Yeah.
also why I really emphasize the feminine part, or the more human part. There are, of course, also men who are able to change their form of leadership
Yeah.
and to change the
Oh,
way
and
they
actually
think.
are doing it, huh? I mean, it's not, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
And also Female Way of Change, we're launching now a program in the end of January that for male allies and male advocates to move into that conversation. So it's not going to be that we're going to teach them how to, but they need to be educated, and they
Yeah.
need to. We need to bring those women and men to more together. So it's really a program to move into conversations on how we can do it together.
Yeah. Yeah. So even though you are well aware of the situation, the current situation in the world right now, and yet you focus on the part that you can actually make a difference. And
That's yeah,
when the moments arrived when you leave this planet and whatever happens after, you've done something. You've
I've
done
done something.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always say, I'm not an activist. And I
Yeah.
saw a conversation yesterday on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
that about being a feminist or not. And uh, I love that there are so many people who really are an activist. That they bring change in a completely different way, because we do need that as well. For me, I'm not an activist. I bring things in a different way, and I love education. That's very important. And with the projects that we're doing. So, absolutely, by now I have four grandchildren. I'm really, really proud and happy grandmother. But it's, and they bring me closer to my purpose, that I really need to work on it.
Yeah.
Because, I'm doing this also for them and for their generation.
Yeah.
I want to, give them, hand over a legacy to be that I can be proud of,
Yeah.
and that my grandsons and my granddaughters, I
Yeah.
have two,
Both. Yeah.
two of each, so that's great
Oh,
because
yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
others, um, but that they are never going to tell me or ask me the question. So, Grandma, what did you do to change the situation?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I have a story to tell, and that for me is very important, and that should be important
To,
actually for everyone, because if you have really that feeling, because that's a feeling that comes from your heart, that's a feeling that comes from your gut, from your intuition, and not from there I
yeah.
have to do things, but that is the feeling that you really want to be part of the solution instead
Yeah.
of of the problem.
Yeah. Something else now. I often come across the belief that doing good for the world means we have to sacrifice something of ourselves, or that standing up for ourselves is somehow not acceptable. Do you believe doing good for the world requires personal sacrifice? Or is there a way to balance both? What's your vision on that?
Well, for me, it doesn't feel as a sacrifice.
No.
That's the same that people ask me. So, you turn 65. So when are you going to retire? I say, why would I retire? I love the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I really feel that the things that I am doing, they have a meaning. They bring value, that I'm making an impact. But that's the way that I'm doing it. I just love doing it. But I also love to, of course, do things that I like, to make time for my grandchildren, and I really love it that I do have time for them. But I just told you that we will be traveling. In
Yeah.
a couple of days' time we will be leaving, and travel for 2 months, and maybe even longer. The last time that we left, that was in 2008, that we said we're going for a couple of months. We stayed for a year and a half. But I think, especially now with the kids and the grandkids, we're not going to do that. But it is a combination of work, because I will be the digital nomad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everywhere that we will be going, it is checking if they have Wi-Fi, and otherwise, I have my phone and my hotspot, so I can just do the things that I need to be doing. So it will be a combination of enjoying life, adventure, exploration, meeting new people. That is for me. So what am I sacrificing? That is. I feel more. It's a feeling of gratitude that I can do this
Yeah. Yeah.
in this way. So no,
Yeah, I was asking this question because I empower women to take position in when you work for companies
yeah,
within the
yeah,
organization. And often there is this belief that, of course, can be changed, but there is this belief that standing up or making your point or claiming your space is something that we should not do. We should not do because people can think of us. We should not do because what happens to the other people in the meeting room? Do they get their space? This is the point I'm trying to watch your vision on this, because for sure, in my belief, you've done different because you
mm,
had to take your space, claim your space
yeah,
to be able to make the impact on this world that you're doing right
yeah,
now.
yeah. Um, Well, first of all, I think that more women who do work in a corporate or business
Yeah,
environment, in their role in an organization, that it is very important for them as well to do the things that they love doing.
yeah,
If
Yeah.
you don't, it will kill you. And I really, really um, mean it. It will make you sick. And we talked about it at a conference where we met a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
If people are doing things that they feel uncomfortable about, then they get these burnouts, and I have my own experience that they do, and even right now, it's even more that they get depressed.
Yeah.
The whole health situation, and especially the mental health situation, is epidemic. It's almost a pandemic. So if you hear a little bit noise, it's my doggy.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I was, after you would finish your sentence, I would welcome the dog into the
Not me.
podcast. Yeah.
I think my husband is coming home, so he will.
Oh, he's happy.
He
Yeah.
already saw that he's happy. But anyhow, that is for me is a very important that when you do work in an organization, yes, claim your space, of course.
Yeah.
But I also feel, and if you do work in an organization, and if you want to make that career, you want to climb that career ladder, be
Hmm.
aware of who you are, and,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that for me is so important. And we talked about that conference as well. There are so many, and I see it with my own daughters, in their 30s, having a family, wanting to make that career, that pressure from all sides. You have to keep up, you have to be healthy, you have to go and exercise.
Yeah.
There is so much pressure from all sides. So if you do want to take that space, yes, of course, but that space is also something you really need, and feel, your
Yeah.
heart, your gut.
Yeah.
Is it what makes you happy? Because that's very important. And if it doesn't make you happy, you're not going to claim that space in your authentic feminine way.
Yeah.
So be aware of,
No, nowhere. Not even, not at your work, but also not at home.
no,
Nowhere.
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 Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do, Susan, I believe in that we are equal. And in many cases, and especially in organizations, um, most of the time we're still not. There's still the equal pay gap. There's still,
Yeah.
not enough women moving upwards. But be aware if this is your journey, if this
Yeah.
if this is what you want to do, because it will be tough. It is, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're doing the things that you want to be doing, if you are working for a company that is aligned with your values, that is aligned with, also your
And not
purpose,
only on a wall, nicely written on a wall,
not
but
only on the
no, no,
wall, but
no.
that everyone is living those
Yeah.
values, that
Yeah.
everyone is living that purpose. It's fine, and you will be happy. That's okay. But yeah, it's just for me. Yeah, be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
And to be aware is to be self aware first. Self aware first. And
that
from
is
there,
great
you can
stuff.
actually make the authentic decision. What do I want? What do I
Yeah,
want to contribute? Is it
yeah,
here? Is it somewhere else? Is it in a different way?
yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. And that is also, why we see that many women are leaving
Yeah.
organizations
Yeah.
before they can really move up in organizations. Uh, well, first of all, moving up in organizations, how this organization still looks like the pyramid. So there's only very few people who move up, men or women. So if you make that a fight to be there, that's already something. Um, but it's the thing is the combination and the balance, or the harmony. I like that word, harmony, of finding that space of what you're doing at home, what you're doing in your private situation. We almost make it not as important as what is happening in your working environment. You spend so much time at work that it almost, your private situation becomes less important. But actually, and you will figure that out, somewhere in
along the
your
way.
life
Yeah.
that you feel like, wow, that time was almost only so short, but I was constantly busy doing the things that, you
Yeah,
know,
but still, I've heard you saying it. It's my story as well. I've done the things. I went to school. I went to, I studied. I was a year abroad, and then I had to find a job because that was the normal
yeah,
thing to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
But we don't even question this.
yeah.
And still, sometimes I am in front of a group doing a workshop or a talk or whatever, of young women less than 5 years after finishing university or school or whatever. And then my hopes are that they have different choices. At home, they're different choices. But at their home, at age 30, they still have the, let's call it in a friendly way, discussions with their partner. So when a kid arrives, if you're the lucky one to have a kid,
Mm-hmm.
who takes care of the kid?
Mm-hmm.
And they all look at the women still. So it's a
Yeah,
discussion, and it's still there. These things are still so normal that we don't even question them. And
yeah,
if we don't question things, things will not change. Yeah, and until of course at a certain point you're done, and then you make your own decisions. But,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And most of the time, that is after, you have realized, and that's your story, my story.
yeah.
So I decided at 42 that I was not, doing that anymore.
Oh, that
And
was my age as well.
yeah, yeah,
But not now. I mean,
yeah,
then. Yeah,
yes. So
yeah,
I was not going to do it. But, that was already after many years of struggles.
yeah,
My oldest
yeah,
was 15 at the time, 15 and 12, something like that. Um, but you have gone through so many years of struggle. And I love to see, I have two daughters.
hmm,
They have both, they're both entrepreneurial. They're
yeah,
both, so it's, I love that they had made these choices really sooner so that they do have that
yeah,
time to really decide, okay, I'm going to spend time on, on my family, or time on, and there was actually, oh, that's a great story. My oldest one was, she was interviewed by a pretty young guy, and so they were talking about her business,
yeah,
and then he said, "So do you have children?" She said, "Yes, I have two girls." And then his conclusion was, "Okay, so you're a 100% mom." And actually, she felt very confused after that. And she came to me and she said, "Mom, can you imagine that someone says I'm 100% mom because I do have my business?" I said, "Well, let me ask you two questions. So you're at work and someone calls you and said there's something wrong with something happening with your girls. What do you do?" And
mhm,
she said, "I drop everything and I go home." I said, "Okay, now the next question. You're at home and someone calls you and says there's something wrong, there's something happening in your business. What do you do?" And she said, "Well, I'll first make sure that my girls are safe, that someone is taking care
yeah,
of them, or I will tell them, okay, I'll see you the next day." I said, "Yes." And that's because you're 100% mom, and you're running a business. You're an
yeah. An
entrepreneur.
entrepreneur.
But
Yeah,
that being a mom or being a grandmother for me now,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
that home situation is so important, and still we act as that business is, the most, or that job is the most important thing in our life. So that is something I really feel is important, and also the fact that there is so much, burnout, depression,
yeah, yeah.
all these things that
Very young age. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we
Even
need to take
younger
that
now.
edge off. We really need to take that edge off and
Yeah,
really start feeling and becoming aware of what we really want out of life.
yeah. And ask ourselves these questions: what do I want?
What do I
And
want?
it can mean the answer can be anything. But when it comes from you,
Yeah.
all three hearts,
Yes.
preferably, yeah, then
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, I have one more. Well, actually, two more questions, but the last one is a practical question. Um, what what is, no, let's say like this. How can women use their feminine values and energy to create a positive change? And I'm asking this for women, but it's the same with men, right? It's feminine values and energy, so can doesn't have to be
Well,
sex.
actually, your feminine values and your feminine energy, that is so who you are, that, well, first of all, and that's what we mentioned before, you need to be aware of what it is,
Yeah,
and that is that inner search. That really is very important. But if you are aware of what your values are and that energy is, what that it brings, um, you will never be able to do without. So it is who you are,
yeah,
if
yeah. It's
someone
essence.
it's
It's
yeah,
essence. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely, it's your
yeah,
essence. So if someone approaches me and is telling someone or asking me to do something that is really not aligned with who I am, I'm not going to do it. It's not
yeah,
going to happen. Um, it's impossible.
yeah.
And that is what I love that word. That it's your essence. If once that you have figured out what it is, um, no one is going to make
No,
you do things that is not aligned with who
no.
you are.
You're like a rock.
Absolutely.
You're like a rock.
A
Yeah.
soft rock.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, 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 of course. But whatever storm is around you,
Yeah.
you know what you have
No.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that,
In whatever the situation is.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that is what I like, also with, for the program that we bring with Female Way of Change, but also what we're doing with the Wise Move Society. If you know what your essence is, and you are facing whatever challenge or whatever is happening in your life, you will be able to step back and you will be able to figure out, okay, so what is it that I am going to do
yeah,
in this situation?
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah. I think that's a very nice way to end our conversation, Ingun. What do you think? Or is there anything you
it's
want to?
beautiful. But you had one last question, you said. So
Yeah, but it's a practical question. That's a
okay.
practical question. Yeah, it's where can people find you online if they are listening to this podcast episode and they're curious? Where do I find Ingun Bol?
Well, of course, all the social media platforms. So that's one. And um, yeah, I have my podcast series, especially for the
Yeah.
Wise Move Society. We have, we're in the third year of doing podcast series, and I really love these stories. But also, the website, and of course, for Wise Move Society, we have our online community. That's a closed community
Okay.
with
Yeah.
members. So it's not like I'm going to find it and I'm going to be there. Yes, you're welcome to join. Absolutely. Um, and of course, Female Wave of Change.
Yeah.
That's the other organization. I did step back as president at the beginning of this year, so that I really think we need to make space
For
for next generations, younger generations, and get that conversation going.
yeah. Thank you, Ingun, for this. According to me, how I experienced an inspiring conversation, and let's hope many more listeners will feel the same way as I do right now. Thank you.
But it was really great to be here. Thank you, Susan.